What's up, everyone? It's Dan with Main Deck, and we have some very exciting news. Just yesterday, the full Set 1 for Grand Archive Dawn of Ashes is revealed. It is all up right now on Index, which is the Grand Archive's official, card database that's available at index.gatcg.com. You can see it right up here on the screen, front page of that. So we finally, at long last, have the entire set, every single card that is coming out in Set 1, which means that it is time for theory crafting to begin. It's time to start building decks. And what I thought I would do is just bring you guys sort of just very informal thoughts on, just basically every single card that just got revealed here. So I'm breaking this up into 4 videos. This first video here that we're doing is going to be the ultra rares and super rares, and I'm going to try to release these as quickly as I'm able to. When you're getting to this, they might all be available, and if so, we'll have them linked right at the end of the video for you to easily travel to the other videos. But there are a lot of cards here, so we're going to be doing our best to kind of plow through these as quickly as possible. A quick caveat before I jump in, this is not going to be like please don't take this as the gospel, right? I'm someone who's been paying attention to the game since well before the Kickstarter launch. I've played the game a whole bunch, but that said, this is a new game. This is a game with some different mechanisms, and we may end up sort of deciding certain cards are better or worse after getting to experiment with them a little bit. But as I'm recording this, we haven't even had this full list for 24 hours yet. So while we do have some idea on how things play based on our play with the Lorraine and Rye decks and the launch party games, and some of the tamer stuff has been shown prior to this and been played with, but there are going to be some things where I'm going to get some things wrong here. I'm absolutely sure. So I'm just going to go ahead and give you, my quick take on everything as we plow through the whole list, and just make sure to take it with a grain of salt that this is not necessarily the end-all, be-all analysis of every single card here. And there's going to be a few other awesome, very competitive players around the community who are going to be putting up their own analyses. And if we clash, I don't know, maybe take their word for it over mine. But I do hope that you get something out of this. Should be kind of interesting. If you haven't seen too much of the game yet, you've just been waiting to dive in, I hope you find a few little nuggets of wisdom here as we go through everything. So without any further ado, let's jump in. As I said, in this video, we're looking at the ultra rares and super rares. So there are 5 ultra rares, and then there are 35 super rares. We're going to start with all the ultra rares. The very first card we're going to look at, by the way, ultra rares are 1 in 24 boxes, so you should be getting these, not very frequently. Every ultra rare is a regalia item, so that means that you can only include one of it in your material deck, so you don't need to hunt down multiples of these things, and you might not need all of them. In fact, you definitely won't be able to use all of them in the same deck. So this one, however, our first one we're looking at here is the Grand Crusader's Ring. This is our very first divine relic in the game, and actually, as it turns out, this is the only divine relic in the game so far. We can say, as of Set 1, this is very likely a staple card that you are going to be wanting to get a copy of and slot in every deck, but as we go through, hopefully in the Set 2, Set 3, we see some more divine relic options that will mix up what card you're going to play in your single divine relic slot, as you can only have one card with that keyword in your material deck. Grand Crusader's Ring costs 0 to materialize. You banish it to draw a card. It is just a straightforward, always draws you a card, whereas every other regalia item that draws a card usually has some sort of condition stapled onto it. Grand Crusader's Ring does not. It's an amazing card. We also have 1 regalia item for each of the advanced elements in Set 1. So our Arcane regalia ultra rare is Tome of Sacred Lightning. This is a very interesting card. There's a couple things going on with it. First of all, it has an element bonus ability that allows you to banish a book regalia you control to activate it straight from your material deck. And if you do, it enters the field with all the abilities of the banished card. There's actually only 1 book regalia in Set 1. Which is the Tome of Enlightenment, which is one we've seen for a while, that gives your character +1 level, and then you can banish it to draw a card. So this is kind of a cute thing to be able to stack on top of that, to still have access to that +1 level, and then every single turn as the mage playing this card, you get to rest it. I almost say tap. You get to rest it to banish a card at random from your memory to draw a card. That's actually a very strong ability, I think. The cards that are already in your memory are the ones you've already spent to play things. So this isn't like a discard a card from your hand, draw a card where your resources are staying staying equalized. Instead, you are using a card you've already spent to basically, it's kind of like you're sending that card back into your hand to be able to spend it again or to play it. Except you're trading it for a different card. And the cool synergy here is that this banishes a card at random from your memory. So if you banish another Arcane card, it can actually stack on top of Rise level 3. If you're playing Rise Stormseer level 3, which gives you +1 level for every Arcane card in your banishment. And there may be some other little synergies that we haven't quite caught yet, but it's an interesting card. It seems like a very powerful way to get card draw turn after turn. Of course, Rise trying to end the game as soon as possible once he gets to level 3 and kind of combo out, but this can maybe get you there. So interesting card. Majestic Spirit Crest is our Crux ultra rare. This gives your champion on attack draw card until end of turn, and it costs 0. Again, you have to be level 3 in set 1. Warrior has Crux element, so you have to be level 3 Lorraine in order to materialize this. And in a way, this is kind of like the Grand Crusader's Ring, where it is you get to draw a card. It does require you attack, but if you're playing Warrior, you are going to be doing that anyway, hopefully. Especially, certain Lorraine builds. There's 2 different Lorraine level 3s, and one of them can guarantee you get a weapon out there, Lorraine Spirit Ruler, to be able to attack with. So this card really strikes me as, at worst, it's a Grand Crusader's Ring once you get to level 3, but at best, there are multiple ways in Crux, or if you're playing like Wind Element, to ready your champion and attack again, and you will be able to continue to, attack and draw more cards as you go. So this is actually, I think this is a very, very strong card. And if you're playing a Warrior deck that intends to go to level 3, you're not trying to like aggro out and finish the game before then, this is probably a card that's worth a slot in your material deck easily, I'd say. The Luxum, which is the Assassin's Advanced Element in set 1, ultra rare, is Luxera's Map. This card is pretty fascinating, I think. It costs 1 to materialize, but it costs 1 less to materialize if you're playing an Assassin. So I guess that's some setup for the future when we get other classes that can also play Luxum as their level 3. So it's free technically in set 1 for every intent and purpose. It enters the field rested, and then you tap it, so you can't do it the turn you play it. So following turn, you would rest it and then banish it to search your deck for a card and put it into your memory. So this actually lets you get anything and put it in your memory. You can only activate it at slow speed for what it's worth. They kind of stacked like every possible like drawback onto this card, because you can't activate the turn you play it, and then it's a card that goes to your memory instead of going into your hand, so you can't immediately play the card you get with it. So this is a lot of setup to get a tutor, but it is a free tutor in your deck. That said, I think this is a pretty cool card that can get like a game-ending card. We'll be looking at a few of those for Assassin here as we go through. It also can do something really interesting with a card called Triskit, one of the super rares we're going to be looking at, who is a card you kind of have to build your entire deck around, and your deck's going to be very clunky until you can activate her. So this may be the card that kind of clinches that and helps you put that Triskit deck together, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, like Assassin basically has the option of a free tutor, even if it's very, very slow. I'm not positive it's really good, because you might be trying to end the game before that. You might die before you even get to use the card. One thing that's worth noting too, I guess, is that it puts the card into your memory, and Assassin does a lot of cool little tricks with revealing cards from your memory in order to get effects. And so this can actually put it into your memory, and then you can intentionally put like a Luxum card in there and then reveal it to get its on reveal effect. We'll be looking at all that a little bit later too, but I'm sure it's got some little tricks and synergies with it too. But those are but one more, I should not forget. Tamer's advanced element is Terra, and the Terra ultra rare is Gaia's Blessing. I think this card is quite strong also. It looks like all of our ultra rares are able to be played for free, which is kind of neat. This one, instead of banishing a book like the Arcane one, this one says you banish 4 animal and or beast ally cards from your graveyard to activate it from your Imperial deck without paying its costs. So, you just have to have had some animals or beasts die, or perhaps play like a self-mill strategy. We'll be seeing some stuff that may play in a self-mill in water, it looks like, as we go through some of these videos. But when you have this in play, you play with the top card of your deck revealed, and then you may activate animal or beast ally cards from the top of your deck. So you can, any ally or beast you see on the top of your deck, you can play. If you have played games like Magic the Gathering, where you have effects like this, you do know that this effect can really compound some card advantage for you as you start to find the allies that you want to play on the top of your deck. Every time you play one from the top of your deck, it's like you are drawing a card effectively. And it's just giving you access to more than what was just in your hand also. And I think really importantly for this game too, because your cards in your hand are your resource that you use to pay for those cards, you are not going down resources when you play those cards from the top of your deck as well, which I think makes this very, very strong. I would definitely consider this in most Sylvie Terra builds. Okay, so those are our 5 ultra rares. Again, 1 per box for those. Now we have the super rares. These should be one every 6 or 8 packs. I'm blanking on it right now. 1 every 6 or 8 packs. I think I'm going to say it's 6. So I apologize. I should have looked that up right before I started this. But super rares, we have 35 of them. So they're a whole lot to collect. And there is a mix between these regalias that you just need 1 of per deck, and then cards that you can run the full complement of 4 of here. So I predict that these super rares are going to be the ones that people are going to be chasing down, other than the Grand Crusaders ring, and perhaps like for your specific deck, that like Advanced Element ultra rare. You may be most after trying to, find these super rares to finish off play sets for your decks. We're starting off with Arcanist Prism. This is a well-known card that is in the Rye starter deck in first edition. It was in the Rye print and play as well. It's a very powerful card, but a lot of people should have access to it because every single starter deck is coming with a copy of this. It's probably going to be a very cheap card to get a hold of if you don't have access to buying a starter deck. But it makes it so that at the start of your recollection phase, you get to put all cards from your memory, the bottom of your deck in any order, and then draw that many cards. So importantly, this does allow you to just keep digging deeper, and Rye is very interested in finding his Arcane Blasts typically to end the game, and this helps you find them. But it has a little cool trick that you get to do, which is that this ability to put cards in your memory in the bottom of your deck and draw that many triggers before the normal recollection element of your turn. So you get to use the Arcane Prism's triggered ability, draw a whole bunch of cards, and then you can, if you have any fast speed actions, you can play them still during your recollection phase before you pass on to the part where the recollection actually occurs. And then anything you place down to play cards from your hand, you then pick back up as your normal recollection for the turn. So it actually allows Rye to time travel a little bit. It's a little bit of a time warp, speeding up time kind of effect, where he's able to play a whole bunch of fast speed things. So depending on your deck, especially if you're running a lot of fast speed spells, or like a fire deck with fireballs, this could certainly give you a big tempo advantage as well. But it's a great card, a solid one for sure. Prismatic Edge. Likewise, wow, this Hammer guy commented a whole bunch on there. Shout out to Hammer. Look at all this. You should read what Hammer says. I'm sure he says some interesting stuff here. Prismatic Edge is likewise a well-known card because it was in the Lorraine starter deck, and is likewise a very strong card for Lorraine. It does have a cost of 2, but Lorraine has ways to cheat these regalia out of her material deck. And it's a very powerful 3 power weapon, so it adds a lot of damage to her swings. It only has 1 durability, but the important thing is the on-enter here, that allows you to get up to 2 different effects based on which elements are revealed. Well, actually, I should say up to 3, because your opponent could be playing this Triskit thing that we're going to talk about. Usually, they might play multi-elements, and you can get a lot of effects. But each player reveals all cards in their memory. If a fire element card's revealed, choose a unit, including your opponent's champion, as an option. Deal 3 damage to it. If a water element card's revealed, you draw a card, and if a wind element card's revealed, each opponent banishes a random card from their memory. So just a lot of useful stuff. It's a great card to use. There's various effects that allow you to bounce it back and replay it. The main one is Spirit Blade Ascension. Anytime it comes back into play, you're going to get that on-enter effect again, which can be very strong. It's a great weapon. It does cost a little bit, but you're usually going to cheat it. So definitely one I consider in Lorraine decks for sure, because I think it has the ability to end the game sometimes when you can't otherwise. Okay, so now we have a newer one. So this is Caliburn of Silencing. This is a regalia weapon for Assassin, a Luxem, of course. Cost of 1 with 1 power, 1 durability. So it's a very weak, like, stat-wise weapon, especially for being an advanced element card, but it has on champion hit. The hit champion loses all abilities until the beginning of your next turn, and that is actually a massive power. especially once you reach level 3 and you're facing opponents like, again, if you're facing the Rye that levels up based on the number of arcane banished cards he has, you can just reduce his level all the way down to 3 for the turn, which I mean would completely shut down his ability to combo off on you. So definitely one I would consider in the deck, if nothing else, to have an option to kind of interact with your opponent and slow down their win, or like Lorraine pumping her damage. You know, there are a lot of reasons that this could be a very useful card. And I do like this, just having weapons in the assassin deck, because there are some attacks that assassin's going to play that you would like to power up, I think, sometimes, and just having that extra 1 damage can add a bit of punch to the assassin's attacks. We'll talk about that in just a moment too. We have Seed of Nature for Terra. This is another 0-cost regalia item that enters the field rested. But it's kind of just a cool ability. When it enters, your champion gets +2 level until end of turn, but it enters rested, so you can't activate this rest class bonus ability until a future turn. Then on a future turn, you can rest it and banish it, and your champion gets +2 levels until end of turn. So it's +2 levels now, and it's +2 levels on a future turn, which helps Tamer hit her pride to be able to use her very strong allies to attack with, who all have the pride ability that requires your level to be higher. It also is nice, you know, especially if you're running like a fire tamer and you have like things like fireball or things that are counting on your level to be higher, can give you another boost to really power those up. Okay, Discordia, Harp of Malice. Now this is an interesting card. I think we've seen in this whole set now, we've seen a lot of harmony and melody cards. And I definitely think, I don't know exactly which element is strongest with them. I'm kind of leaning on fire right now, but I see some really good things in wind and water too, so I'm not like totally sure. But I think there are harmony and melody decks out there that are going to be very playable, and this card is going to be a card you're going to want to have in your material deck if you're playing that. Basically, the gist of it, we have cards that are melody cards and cards that are harmony cards, and they have harmonize, and the harmonize ability says if you played a melody action earlier in the turn, then you get an extra effect, sometimes like draw a card, or there's a fire one that does damage to things if you played a melody earlier in the turn. So the idea is that in this sort of deck, every turn you're trying to play a melody and a harmony to be able to kind of maximize the impact of what you're doing. This makes it so whenever you activate a harmony or melody card, you put a music counter on it, and then at any point you may rest it to give target champion -X level and your champion +X level until end of turn, where X is the amount of music counters on Discordia. So a couple important things to note: this is a tamer instrument, but it has no class bonus, so it is possible to use this in like a mage deck that's trying to use some of the harmony and melody stuff. Now, a lot of the harmony and melody cards have increased effects, or they're a little more efficient under Tamer, so it does look like Tamer is going to really appreciate those a bit more. But I could see kind of messing around a little bit with some of those in like a mage deck in particular to be able to take advantage of sort of a lot of those like mage efficiency cards and everything. You know, you're getting that +X to your level, -X to your opponent's level, which can also hurt again, like if you're facing off against a mage deck or something, where X is the number of music counters on Discordia, and then you banish Discordia at the beginning of the next end phase. So again, it's just one shot, but in Grand Archive, a lot of these kind of one-shot effects are when you're like pushing for sort of a haymaker end of game turn. But yeah, it seems like a shoe-in card for harmony and melody decks. We have a number of different sort of iterations of Excalibur in this set. So this one is Excalibur Cursed Sword. Again, this set is based on Arthurian legends loosely, sort of like an anime adaptation of it. This Excalibur Cursed Sword, this is a very fascinating one because it's actually a mage sword that costs 0 and has damage of 1, durability of 3. However, it says on enter, choose a player. That player gains control of Excalibur. So what you're really trying to do is give this, if you're playing the mage, you're trying to give this to your opponent, because then it says whenever you materialize a card, deal 2 damage to your champion. So it makes your opponent need to try and use this up in order to stop taking damage when they materialize things, or they stop materializing things, which is probably the wrong call. So they're probably going to just keep materializing things instead and take the damage. So really this, like if they do that, this can end up being a nice like 6 damage, 4 to 6 damage, something like that on your opponent, for the cost of one of your materialized steps, which might be just what you need to kind of finish the game off. And you can try and time it at an interesting time too. Like I think obviously if you time it earlier, it's better. Getting this off, if you have like a an early turn as mage where you just don't need to materialize anything. You can instead try and you don't need to like level up, I should say. You might just be able to give this to your opponent then and plink off a little bit of extra damage on them, and it could potentially allow you to push for an early victory when they're at level like 2 instead. So yeah, and I like this card. I think it's interesting. And the downside is it does make them able to get attacks off with the deal 1 damage to you, but on the plus side, it may force them to use this weapon instead of a stronger weapon because they're trying to get rid of it. Because the 1 damage isn't really that much, and if you're playing like a warrior, they might want to be using a much better weapon than this in the mid game. So I like it. I like it. It makes their options a little tougher. Okay, here we have Galatine, Sword of Sunlight. Now, Galatine is a cool build around me card. I like this card a whole lot. It costs 1 to play, which is, you do have to, so you have to get rid of a card to play the sword, but it has a 1 base attack of 1, base power of 1, base durability of 1. And it says whenever you activate a sword attack card, you put a durability counter on Galatine. And then Galatine gets +1 power for every 3 durability counters on it. So in this deck, you want to just be slamming sword attack cards as like every single turn if possible. Building up durability, hopefully. You definitely want to play this with cards like Weaponsmith to just keep the durability building. And, your goal is to be able to have like a 2 power Galatine that you're swinging with periodically that you kind of got for a discount at that point of 1 cost, and getting that durability counter on it every single turn. And by the way, you'll get that durability counter before you use it with an attack. You get the durability counter when you activate the attack card, and then when the attack resolves, you remove the durability counter from it. So it can freely attack with attack cards without having to go away, which is already, I think, actually pretty strong and probably worth the 1. But then the fact that you can build up durability counters on it to get higher damage means I think this is an interesting card to build around if you want to play a deck that is just playing attack cards turn after turn, and rather than necessarily like focusing on going wide with allies or something. Map of Hidden Passage. So this is another one. Note again, it's an assassin. It's an assassin regalia, but it has no class bonus on it. So you could fit this into other decks depending. This one also enters the field rested. It has a cost of 0, and then it has rest. So on a future turn, rest it, banish it. Until end of turn, units with stealth can't be intercepted. I definitely think this is a card that you will want to build around specifically. Assassin does have more stealth units than others, but there are ones like Dream Fairy that are freely playable in any class that have stealth already. And this can sort of allow you to be able to finish the game off if someone is playing particularly defensive, like a defensive Rydek or something. So if you're playing a lot of stealth units in your deck, you might want to include this obviously in your material deck just to kind of have that option to be able to finish the game with that. I don't know if you have to build around it. It might be more like if you incidentally have a lot of stealth, you would put this in your material deck. Orb of Glitter is a generic regalia item. It says mage, but really anyone can play this one. Costs 1 to play at the beginning of your recollection phase, glimpse 1, and has banish a draw card. We have a lot of cards like this in the game that are a 1 cost with a banish draw card and then some other like constant effect. This one's just quite generic, but that glimpse 1 at the beginning of your recollection phase might help you dig to something. I think this is like kind of maybe on the weaker end because it doesn't quite get you. Like glimpse might help, it might not, you're just not like ever totally sure. I'm not sure I would always put this in because that 1 cost isn't always the most fun thing to pay, and I think we have a lot of decent material deck options, but I could definitely be wrong about that. This might be more playable than I think. It certainly would be on it'd be on my list of things I'd consider, but I would rather opt maybe for something with 0 cost and a condition to draw a card. But I might be totally shown up about that one also. So that's just my take on it right now. Orb of Regret. Now this is an interesting card. Cost 0. Cleric bobbled. That doesn't matter. We don't have a cleric to play any yet, but class bonus is not on this card, so it doesn't matter. Banish Orb of Regret. Shuffle up to 3 cards from your hand into your deck, then draw that many cards. So I see this. You're putting this in your material deck if you are really relying on seeing certain cards and or if you've been like burned by bad opening hands and you want to have a little bit more control over it. This does allow you to trade multiple cards to see more cards. It does not net you any cards at all, so it's not a 0 cost draw card under a condition. It's just it's if you need to see more stuff. Maybe if you are, maybe Rye decks would want to play this just to make sure they can get like more of those arcane cards to start the game so they can like try and banish them. But yeah, or maybe like these Triskit decks that are trying to find Triskit, just to have more ways of doing that. But I guess it's just, I think it's nice to have this as an option out there if you need to be able to filter a little more stuff. I don't know if it's going to be widely played, but it's going to probably show up in some lists. Okay, we are out of the material deck cards, so now we're going to cards that you can run 4 of in your deck. So these are the super rares that I think have the highest potential of having a higher cost to be able to obtain. Because if one of these is good, you might want 4 of it for decks, and that a lot of players might want 4 of it for their decks. So first one is Coup de Grace, which is a 4-cost assassin dagger attack. And this is you're pretty much only going to play this with the assassin. I don't see you playing this outside of an assassin deck. It has Prepare 4, which is the largest prepare ability in the game. Prepare means you have to remove that many preparation counters from it if you want to get a bonus effect on the card. You don't have to do it, but if you do that, you get a bonus effect. In this case, that effect is on attack. If Coup de Grace was prepared, it gains critical 4, which means that if the attack with critical 4 deals would be dealt, it's doubled unless the opponent discards 4 cards from their hand. So the important thing to note about this is that you can still stack a weapon on top of this. So Assassin does have a couple of weapons. One's a 1 power, one's a 2 power, and you can also dip into some like warrior ones if you really want to, but I don't know if it's going to be necessary. But if you can stack on a little bit of extra damage on this at +2, +3 damage in whatever ways you can find. Actually, I think there's a +3. I think there's a +3 in here too. Potential for doing that. Then you're getting to the point where it's like base damage is like 7, and then if they don't discard 4 cards, it deals 14 damage to them. Discarding 4 cards is like going to put most players out of the game unless they're a Rye who's just like stacked a million cards at that point. So a lot of the time, this is probably just going to deal the double damage. So I see this as a very strong game-ending card, but you probably have to build your deck around preparing 4, because getting 4 preparation counters on it isn't that easy. You do get 1 from Xander's level 1, but Xander's probably going to want to be using other prepare cards throughout the game as well. So I think you have to sort of build towards this at the end game and actually play some of the cards in the set that require you to add multiple preparation counters, or that allow you to add multiple preparation counters to your opponent when you play them, if you're going to actually like pull off this coup de grace. But when you do, it's probably going to kill the opponent in one shot. So depending on how you set that up. So I think it's a really dope card, but I definitely want to build around it a little more in your deck. We have Fervent Beastmaster here. This is an ally for Tamer Human. I think you would probably only play this in Tamer as well, though I can see maybe as the game goes on some decks that could maybe reach a little bit. The class bonus here is Vigor, which is a solid ability. It's not as it's not like crazy strong, but it gives your opponent, because it really depends on what your opponent has and how they're dealing with allies. But what Vigor really does, it means they wake up at the end phase, so you can attack with a unit with Vigor. It wakes up, which then means, it really only means outside of some other effects, that you can retaliate with that ally if it's attacked. And against some decks, like some warrior decks, that's going to be attacking allies the only way they can deal with the board. And Vigor gets a lot stronger in those scenarios. But then against other matchups, like a mage deck or something, the Vigor is almost meaningless. They can just they'll just use removal spells, removal actions to deal with these allies. So it really depends on the matchup. But this is a 5 cost with Vigor, 3/3 base, but it says as long as you control a beast ally, Fervent Beastmaster gets +1 power and +1 health. So it becomes a 4/4, which with Vigor is very strong. Like, don't get me wrong. That's a big beefy ally that is going to be very difficult to deal with if your opponent is relying on attacking things to deal with. And importantly, you can retaliate against your opponent's champion if they're using their champion to attack something. So there's the potential that this is going to put out a good amount of damage on your opponent, and isn't necessarily something I would want to mess around with attacking. So I'm interested to see what people do with this card, because Tamers are already juggling quite a bit with animals and beasts, and then having these non-animal, non-beast cards that play off of having other animals and beasts. And I think we're gonna have to find the right sort of ratios of everything to make cards like this work. I'm curious to watch where it goes though. Okay, we have our first unique ally, so you can only have one of these in play at a time. This is Galahad Court Knight. This is a warrior human unique ally, cost 4, power 1, health 4. Galahad can attack using sword weapons you control as a unique ability. So that's a very cool card. I want to see this play a little more. I haven't really seen too much of it. You are sometimes struggling to keep up with the durability on your weapons to keep attacking with your champion. So having another unit that's using up those durabilities and attacking with those weapons might present its own set of problems. But at the same time, that means this thing can probably attack for quite a bit of damage, especially with certain cards like Ornamental Greatsword that will give a +1 power boost when it comes into play. So you can target Galahad with that, give him the boost, and then have Galahad attack with the Greatsword as well, to deal a good amount of damage that way. I can see this being powerful. And then think about like cards with like Banner Knight also, that add attack to both your allies and your weapons, and he kind of gets to stack that bonus on top of them. So I can see this going somewhere, but I am a little concerned just about keeping durability up, and weaponsmiths die very quickly. So I'm not sure how you can do it. Maybe with Galatine, this like can work out a little more where you can kind of keep up that durability, but I'd love to see some interesting builds using Galahad and see how that plays out. Gildas, Chronicler of Asa, is the next card here. This has been proven to be a very strong card in some of the early tournament play. Gildas is a unique ally with cost 3 that has power 1, 3 health, and has a keyworded ability called, or I should say an ability worded ability called Balance, which is Gildas gets +3 power as long as the amount of cards in your hand and memory are equal. The obvious thing here is you have to try and balance that out. And it can be tricky based on the cards in your hand. It can force you into playing some weird things or just simply not being able to turn balance on. But when you are able to get balance to be active, that 4 damage attack for 3 cost is unparalleled. Outside of like some pride creatures and things that make you discard cards and stuff, it's a very strong unit. Definitely one that if I would really consider this if your deck is trying to play more aggressively and has cheap actions, cheap allies, things where you can really like count, do the math correctly so that you actually have the same number of cards in memory and hand when you activate this. And of course, keeping in mind things like when you banish regalia to draw cards can help you ensure that your Gildas stays active as much as possible. Also, after you've completed the attack, Gildas doesn't need to stay in balance, which is the nice thing. So you can really play around that and think about that as you're sequencing your turn to make sure you get the attack off before you play other certain things that would put you out of balance. But yeah, I think it's still a great card and one you're going to consider in decks where you can manage that balance and you're looking for that really strong 4 damage aggressive ally push. Another unique ally in the super rare slot, we have Nimue, Cursed Touch, who costs 3, has 1 power, 3 toughness, is a mage human with class bonus. So you're probably only play this in mage deck. I don't know why you'd play a 3 cost unique ally with the 1/3 stats. That's not in a mage deck. But Nimue has a very unique ability. Whenever you activate an action card that targets an ally, you get to destroy that ally. So this means any action card in your deck that does anything from bouncing something to suppressing an ally to dealing 1, 2, 3, 10 damage. It doesn't matter if you have Nimue in play. If it targets an ally, it destroys that ally. You do have to be careful with this card because there are certain cards that you may play that target your own allies, or you may intentionally target your own ally with like a bounce spell. And if Nimue is in play, it'll cause that ally to be destroyed instead. But this means there are some cards that like there's an action card that suppresses 2 target allies for a cost of 4. That is now with Nimue in play, that is destroy 2 allies. So Nimue can really, really bring out some crazy advantage, or it can make like ignite the spark. Is that what it's called? Sparkalite in fire. Single 1 damage floating memory spell. That normally is something you try and like really sequence around to be able to knock something out with it. In this case, that turns that 1 damage floating memory spell into one cost, destroy target ally, and then floating memory, which is like an absolutely insane deal. So definitely something you want to consider, but again, probably something you're building your deck around a little more specifically. Okay, Arthur Young Heir. This is now we're into the element cards here, the basic element cards. This is a fire unique ally with 4 cost, power 2, health 3, On enter, you may, this is a very unique ally, pun not intended. On enter, you may rest Arthur. If you do, Arthur gains immortality until the beginning of your next turn. A unit with immortality can't die. It can still be bounced, it can still be banished, but it can't be killed or have lethal damage dealt to it. As long as Arthur is rested, other allies you control get +1 power. So, okay, so obviously, if you are concerned that your opponent's going to use sorcery speed removal or something, slow speed removal on your allies, you would want to rest the Arthur when he comes into play to get that immortality to protect him, especially if you think like a board wipe's coming. Arthur's really good if you think your opponent is going to be board wiping you, but you want to continue building because you can play him, let him come in rested, and then get an attack buff on the rest of your board, really put some hurt on your opponent, and just kind of force them into playing that removal spell, even though it doesn't deal with Arthur. Because if they don't wipe the board at that point, you're going to get another turn, this time of Arthur attacking, and then buffing your board, and your opponent probably can't keep up with that very well. So I really like him for that. However, it is worth noting that the on-enter ability can be responded to with a fast speed removal spell. So you do want to make sure that you don't get, wiped out when you go to use that ability on enter, because he can be wiped out before he gains the immortality for being rested. But otherwise, yeah, he's got good stats and he buffs your team. So I think he's a great card if you're playing any sort of warrior. He's not actually, importantly, nothing about this is class bonus. So if you're playing any sort of go wide ally deck, which I think could be likely warrior, assassin, or even tamer, Arthur is an interesting option to try and allow you, like tamer could power up squirrels with this, and do quite a bit more damage also. So, yeah, I like him. I think he's a good card. I'm definitely interested to see the decks that play with this. And we do have the potential of some human tribal stuff, although I think that would start to get really wonky because some of that stuff is in wind also, so it'd be like a weird Triskit deck or something. How about our first domain? Let's talk about Varric Smoldering Spire. So there are 3 domains in the set. This is a unique card type. They're all unique cards, and there's one for each of the 3 basic elements. This one costs 3, Varric Smoldering Spire. They all have an ability called Upkeep. Whenever you materialize a card, you have to sacrifice Varric. So you're giving up your materialized steps to be able to keep up a constant ability in play. In this case, Varric's ability is damage dealt by fire element sources you control can't be prevented. This could be a very important card to play in, especially in like mage decks that are concerned about having their arcane blasts being prevented by things like Spell Shield, or the deflect card that warriors like to play. So if you're playing a fire mage deck, you might consider slotting this just in case your opponent is playing something like that and you need to, like, towards the end of the game, just get this out so you can go for your like final push of damage. But it's not something you want to play early in the game because not being able to materialize cards with it is kind of rough. The nice thing though about this one is that you can sort of like play it and then pump out some of your fire element sources on your next turn, so you like minimize the amount of like upkeep that you have to spend on it, and then just sacrifice it, materialize something next turn, sacrifice it after you've kind of gone through some of that damage. You do have that option available at least. So there's an interesting rules note here too that should be noted that champions are considered to be the type of each element card that exists in their lineage. So Varric would prevent any damage, or would prevent prevention of any damage from your champion as well. So maybe even outside of mage, you could play this in something like a warrior deck where you're planning on slamming the opponent for a lot of damage, fire warrior late in the game. Makes it so none of that damage can be prevented either, which could be pretty strong. Our second domain is Avalon Cursed Isle. Avalon is the water domain. It costs 4 to play, which is getting pretty hefty, and has the same upkeep whenever you materialize a card. You have to sacrifice it. This one says whenever you activate a water element card, target player puts the top 2 cards of their deck into their graveyard. So this card I see is definitely something that you are considering building a deck around. We will look at another super rare very shortly here that is a payoff for self-mill in particular. I'm not sure if this is going to be used to mill the opponent's deck. Mill typically meaning to get rid of cards from their deck into their graveyard. But I can see this being more effective against on your own deck, because in your own deck you can build heavy on floating memory cards, where you can then build up those floating memory cards to be able to play the rest of your cards that you're materializing, like for the rest of the game. And then we have another super rare here that can be played from the graveyard. So there are definitely some things you can set up with this. And I think we'll be looking, as we look through the rest of the cards here, we'll be noting anytime we see cards that play really nicely with self-mill. And this is a case where I could maybe see if you can get the payoff to be worth it, playing this earlier on and not materializing stuff, and just trying to mill as many cards as possible for a couple of turns and then let it go again. So because you probably have to start materializing at some point. But yeah, it's a cool card, very interesting card. Oh, here it is right here. Mistbound Cutthroat. Okay, so this is the payoff card for a self-mill strategy. It is a 4-cost, 3 power, 1 health ally that has Assassin, Selkie, but it doesn't, the class bonus doesn't matter here. Level 3+, whenever another ally card enters your graveyard from your deck, return Mistbound Cutthroat from your graveyard to the field rested. So these Cutthroats can keep coming back anytime you mill another ally. So this is where there's like a huge payoff. If you can manage to get 3 or 4 of these in your graveyard, and then you do a little self-mill, you hit any ally, all of them will come back. They'll come in rested, unfortunately, so it'll have to be like the next turn you'll be able to attack with them. But anytime they die, if your opponent tries to keep wiping the board, then they're just going to keep coming back. I see the strategy as an interesting, maybe kind of like a meme one right now. I don't know if this is going to be a real payoff for a deck, because there are ways to just completely get rid of them. There's a wind board wipe that banishes all allies. And so I'm not sure Mistbound Cutthroat is going to be like a top tier deck, but I'm interested to see if you can build something out of this. I think it'll be meme level right now, but definitely a card to look forward to future sets, maybe starting to make a little more consistent, make more reliable. You also have to find them in your deck, which might be kind of difficult, but yeah, it's a cool card. I like that this exists for the game at the very least. It's going to be interesting to see if strategies can be built around it that are effective. Beseech the Winds. So this is an action cleric mage spell, but class doesn't matter for it. Cost of 3. It's a slow action. It says materialize a card from your material deck. I think this card is pretty good. The worst case scenario, this acts sort of like a dungeon guide, where it allows you to, during your main phase, you can use it to like level up to level 3. Dungeon guide gives you a discount on leveling up, but you can also do things like this, like if you just leveled to level 3, you can use this to speed up your ability to get out those really powerful regalia we looked at earlier for your various classes. So I think this is a card I don't know if you play a 4 of in your deck, unless you're doing something like really, really specific with it, but I can see putting a couple of these in here, because I can see like sort of a late game tempo play, being able to get to level 3 and then play like an Arcanist Prism right away, or one of these like the Tamer one, to be able to start playing cards from the top of your deck. I think there's some pretty useful uses for this card. And I do think as the game goes on and we get more specific regalia that have more specific power, this is a card that will become more useful too. It's probably one to hold on to. I think if you get this, you might just want to hold on to it. You might try playing it in your win deck, a couple copies, but you also might just be interested to see what kind of powerful tempo interactions this has as the game moves on as well. We have our Wind Domain here, Camelot Impenetrable, which costs 3. Again, it has upkeep. Whenever you materialize a card, sacrifice Camelot. This one says whenever you activate a wind element card, you may negate its activation. If you do, choose an ally and suppress it. So basically, this one says all of your wind element cards, which includes allies, includes actions, includes attacks, now have an alternate use of suppress target ally. This is a super rare, so it doesn't have the text written on it, but suppress means to banish that ally and then return it at end of turn, or blink as it's known in other card games. So I think this is a really fascinating card. It'd be a really fun one to build around, because there are a lot of like cheap allies and cheap, more specific wind element cards that you can play, like favorable winds and stuff that aren't always really useful, but the ability to instead blink things with them and get get on enter abilities from allies a second time, or use it to clear out blockers for attacks, is actually pretty strong. And again, I can see like later in the game, having this domain down can like open up some routes to victory that you might not have had before. So I like this one. I think it's really interesting. I don't think any of these domains are necessarily four. No, I think the water one could be a four of if you're doing the self-milting, but I also think that's maybe like a meme. But I could see you playing a couple of this in a deck that's pretty wind heavy, just to be able to have sort of that option open to you later in the game if you happen to see it. Here we go. I was mentioning this earlier. Ravaging Tempest is another super rare. This one is an 8 cost action, but it has efficiency, but so its cost is lowered for each level you have. It is fast, so it can be played on your opponent's turn. That's where I think it can be quite strong as well, to play it on like the end of your opponent's turn or something. This one says banish all allies. For each ally banished this way, its controller draws a card. You really have to be careful with how you play this card, because obviously your opponent gets a bunch of stuff back. It's very much a tempo play. But if you're playing a lot of allies that have, or you're really playing them for like their on enter abilities, turning them into more cards to do more stuff with, especially on your turn, like playing those allies, getting their effects, attacking with those allies on your turn, and then on a new turn, banishing the board, attacking with the allies, banishing the board, then drawing a whole bunch of cards, then playing more allies and attacking with them. You can actually sequence a strong set of plays with this card. I like this one a lot, and I also like that it banishes them. Again, this is like that answer to the Selkie deck that like they can't really recover from because there's no way to get them back out of banish. It's a cool card, but you do have to play it carefully, because giving your opponent cards off of them can allow them to keep beating you down, unlike some of the other board wipes options. Okay. This card. Advent of the Stormcaller costs 15. It has efficiency, so it costs 1 less for each level you have. I think if you're playing this card, you're building an Advent of the Stormcaller deck. I think that's what we're going to see. I might be wrong, but that's my take on it right away. This slow spell, cost 15, says reveal the top level cards of your deck. You may banish any amount of arcane element cards from among them. For each card banished this way, choose a unit and deal 2 damage to it. Put the rest of the revealed cards in the top or bottom of your deck in any order. So you're going to dig level cards. For every arcane element card you find in there, you deal 2 damage to something. What you really want to do with this is use a card like, I'm going to skip ahead here. Power Overwhelming is another super rare that you can find here, which there is 1 copy of this in the Rise starter deck as well. So this is probably going to be a cheaper card, one that's easier to get a hold of. You're building probably a Power Overwhelming combo deck. You're trying to throw a ton of Enlighten counters onto Rye. You're using like Careful Study, cards that become free that just toss more Enlighten counters on. You're playing Power Overwhelming to remove all your Enlighten counters to go up to like level 1 billion. I've seen people get some extremely high levels with this combo. You can get levels into the 20s and 30s without it's not that hard to do it at that point. And then when you're Advent of the Stormcaller, when you have this, it becomes free, and then it digs like 20 cards down and then can just shoot your opponent for a whole bunch of damage. However, you do banish all the arcane element cards you find that way. So you do need to make sure you're able to get the kill with it. You probably have to do your math pretty correctly on this deck to make sure that you are able to get the kill with that. But if you have like 10 arcane cards left in your deck still when you play this, then you're able to shoot your opponent for like 20 and take them out. So I might be meme level. It might be meme level because I think the regular Rye deck might be more consistent, but I could be wrong. This could be the first literal Storm deck in Grand Archive. So build some decks with it, play with it. Let me know how it goes for you. Power Overwhelming, I just went through. Again, you remove Enlightened counters to get +1 level. It's made for comboing. It's a combo card, pure and simple. If you're building a combo deck, and I think that like that Advent of the Stormcaller deck is one you're looking at with this card, then that's you play it. But you could also slot it just as a 1 or 2 of in a regular Ride deck, just to kind of have, having those outs late game to be able to find, put the win together like puzzle pieces. Sometimes it's nice to have those. Reckless Conversion is another arcane card, costs 0, slow spell. Draw 2 cards into your memory and then banish 4 cards at random from it. Now that's not very good. on its own. But the real clincher here is the class bonus. Return all cards from your memory to your hand. So basically, this will be a free card to play from your hand. It puts, excuse me, it puts 2 additional cards into your memory, and then it banishes 4 cards from it. So you can't play this when you have a small memory. You want to have a big memory. Basically, this is like the last spell you play. You're playing out your hand, you're drawing cards, you're doing all sorts of crazy Rye stuff. You play Reckless Conversion, you add 2 more cards to your memory, then you banish 4 cards from it. So you're going to go down 2, but then everything left in your memory after that goes back to your hand, and then you just keep on playing more stuff. This is, again, just a combo enabler. It's not it's a card where you do need to kind of put the combo together. You do need to have plenty of card draw to make it happen. But when you do, this is a part of the Rise crazy Storm turns where he plays a lot of stuff. And we'll see some super rares here that will really play into this, like these like 0 cost, like just being able to play a lot of spells in your turn in just a moment here. Ghosts of Pendragon. So Ghosts of Pendragon is our first Crux super rare. This is an ally warrior human spirit, cost 2, power 3, health 4, crazy stats. So just showing that Lorraine really is the ally champion. If you want to play these powerful allies, she's got them without having to jump through hoops like Tamer does. On enter, you may return a regalia control to its owner's material deck. If you do, draw 2 cards. Very nice ability that allows you to tuck away maybe an extra weapon you have sitting around, but it doesn't have to be a weapon. It can be an item. It can be like a card draw item that hasn't triggered yet. And you want to just toss it away and grab a couple cards instead. And then you can materialize that item again next turn because it goes back to your material deck. Really strong card. It does require that you're playing into multiple turns in Crux. Some Lorraine decks might be trying to aggro faster than that, so I wouldn't play it in those decks, but in the ones where you do want to go multiple turns in Crux, you do want to have strong allies and keep your card advantage up, it's a really solid card, really solid ally. Intangible Geist, this is a new one, so this is a cost of 4, power 3, health 2, has on enter, you may choose any amount of regalia cards from your banishment and put them into your material deck. So this is a really cool card. Importantly, again, that's any regalia, including things like Grand Crusader's Ring that you would use just to banish to draw a card. You can put them back in your material deck, so you're able to then materialize them again to keep getting some more cards off of them. So I think this can sort of replenish you. Again, this is like you're going into a pretty late game Lorraine, but if you're going into it, this can give you some of that advantage that you need. And then it has class bonus, prevent all attack damage that would be dealt to Intangible Geist. So it's like better than stealth. It's like super stealth. You can't do damage to it with attacks. You can attack it, you just can't do any damage to it with those attacks. So hard to get rid of. You need to use like actions or removal spells to be able to get rid of it. Cool card. I think it's pretty good. I'm curious to see how many of these like Crux allies Lorraine really wants to play, because Lorraine decks currently in our experience have been tending to go a little lower on Crux count than on advanced element count in general than some other decks. So we'll see, but I mean, it's a strong ally for sure. Spirit Blade Dispersion. So this is a warrior action fast spell, cost 0. Very niche spell, but I think we've seen now from some of these other SRs and rares where this card really has a home. This says remove all durability counters from any amount of sword weapons you control, then banish them. Choose any amount of units and deal damage equal to the amount of durability counters removed this way, split among them. So you can take all of your remaining durability counters and turn each one into damage. You can probably often just target your opponent's face and like deal 1,000,000 damage with them. Doesn't work in every Lorraine deck. Some of your Lorraine decks are just, especially if you're using Lorraine Crux Knight, you're just trying to play weapons, attack with them, banish them to pump her up later. So she's just kind of cycling through one sword at a time. But I do think there's a Lorraine Spirit Ruler, her alternate level 3 deck, that is going to really like this card. So hang on to this idea for just a second, because I think it's going to be very relevant with this card. Spirit Blade and Soul. So this is another super rare. This is a slow warrior action that costs 6. It's a huge cost. You're probably spending most of your turn playing this card, if not the whole turn. But there, and importantly, it's also worth noting, actually, you can see in orange text here, this is the first functional errata in the game too. They just forgot to put the word next in it. It doesn't really change how the card was supposed to play. It just is an important note there. It says choose any amount of sword weapon cards with memory cost 1 or less from your banishment and or material deck and put them onto the field. Until end of turn, sword weapons you control can attack as though they were allies. At the beginning of your next end phase, sacrifice all sword weapons you control. So all of your sword weapons cost 1 or less come into play. You can immediately attack with them. They don't lose durability when they attack as allies. They can't be dealt damage when they attack, if they're like retaliated against, no damage is dealt. They don't take damage from anything. They just come in and they attack. So this can put a whole bunch of damage onto the board. Importantly, if you have like things like Banner Knight that add +1 damage to all your weapons, that's going to still apply. So you're going to be able to pump a whole lot of damage out there with things like Banner Knight. However, things that pump damage onto allies will not affect Spirit Blade and Soul. They do come in with all their durability counters, and that's where it's really important that I think this in Soul is the first step of the combo to win the game, where you bring all the swords out, have all the swords attack. And the second step is Dispersion. Then take all the durability counters off and have a second blast of damage to the opponent to finish them off. I think if you can play a Lorraine Spirit Knight build, a Lorraine Spirit Ruler build, whose level 3 ability allows you to put a sword into play with 3 extra durability counters on it, which also is nice for just dispersion in general. You can get a lot of weapons out. You can attack with them. You can dispersion your opponent, and you can really just ensure you're working with these weapons, keeping them out and able to do things with them. You have to sacrifice the sword weapons at the end of turn. So you're going to need to find a way to get them back after that, but you're hoping to, I think, just finish the game the turn you play in Soul. There's another combo, actually, before I move on. I just want to mention one more thing too. Spirit Blade Ascension is one of Lorraine's favorite cards. It allows you to return a sword weapon, or return a weapon you control to the material deck and then materialize a sword weapon from your deck. So you can actually use that to attack with a sword and then Ascension, bounce the sword away, and then you can actually play any sword then, including like, where do we have it here? We're so deep here. You can use that to play Prismatic Edge, get the on-enter effect, deal damage to your opponent, and then that Prismatic Edge will be able to still attack from in Soul and then attack for 3 damage. You can, again, you can use these combos, I think, to get a lot of damage out of nowhere. So I do think I'm really interested in this Lorraine Spirit Ruler build that maybe plays in Soul and plays a little differently than the Crux Knight deck and tries to kind of just go for a giant sword attack at the end of the game. For Assassin super rares, we have Lightweaver's Assault. This is a fast 4-cost action assassin skill with reveal all cards in your memory. Choose any amount of units and deal damage equal to the amount of cards revealed this way, split among them. So Assassin's Luxum's thing is really interesting. These are cards, there's a set of cards that reveal cards from your memory, and then a set of cards that do things when they're revealed. This one actually does both. It also has class bonus, element bonus, which means you only get this when you are level 3 assassin with Luxum. Whenever you reveal Lightweaver's Assault from your memory, choose a unit and deal 2 damage to it. So you can immediately see that if you just have a bunch of Lightweaver's Assaults in your deck, you can play Assault. If you reveal your memory and you have 2 Lightweaver's Assaults in there, you are going to then deal 4 damage divided as you choose among things, as well as dealing damage to things with the Assault. So I think it's going to be interesting to see which direction Assassin takes. Assassin is kind of an in-between of Mage and of Mage and Warrior in a way. Assassin has allies that attacks with. Assassin has attack cards like Coup de Grace that we saw where they can push big damage. Assassin also has some direct damage component if you play into this like Luxum side of things. So and some of the Assassin like traps and stuff can do direct damage. You might play Fire Assassin that has more of that. So I think there's going to be multiple different assassin builds, but this is actually a very strong ability because it's a fast skill as well. And of course it costs 4, but that allows you to set up your memory to do at least 4 damage to things. And then if you set up with more Lightweaver's Assaults or other assassin reveal effects, you can do even more cool things with that. So very cool card. I think if this assassin deck is good, this is going to be an SR you're going to need 4 copies of for that particular build. You're going to want to get these ones. Likewise, I think this is another build around me. Assassin card might be a different route, though, than the sort of revealing cards Luxem build. This is 1,000 Refractions, a 0 cost attack assassin dagger, 1 damage with prepare 1. So you do want to have a preparation counter to be able to use that. But if you do, if it was prepared, you get to wake up your champion on hit and then return 1,000 Refractions to your hand to be able to attack again. So this can definitely allow you to get a number of strong attacks off. Xander in particular, if you're playing the Xander Assassin from set 1, his level 2 allows you to deal +1 damage to rested units. So that's where you can start really stacking up some awesome damage on here. 1,000 Refractions with the Xander bonus on if your opponent's like playing a champion that attacks like Lorraine, so it's going to be rested. Then you're looking at +1 damage from Xander level 2. Level 2 is inherited effect. Then +1 damage from like using a weapon or the dagger or something with it. You're looking at 3 damage swing and then prepare it, bounce it back to your hand, and then swing for 2 or 3 more, whatever you've got. Can definitely push some nice damage. And as long as you have preparation counters, you can keep attacking with this card as well. So if you just stack up preparation counters, at the very least, you can just like pummel your opponent a whole bunch of times, really taking advantage of Xander's level 2 there. And I think that, again, it's probably build around me like attack style assassin instead, but definitely seems good to me. Again, you probably want 4 of this if you're building that deck. I imagine it's going to be like one of your bread and butter advanced element cards. Triskit Guidance Angel. So for those who don't know, this card is the Kickstarter ultimate tier reward for there's a duo who backed at the $10,000 Kickstarter tier who got to then get a whole bunch of product and then design a card. The card was designed after one of those people, Triskit, and she actually does YouTube videos as well. So you should definitely check her stuff out. I'll see if I remember. I'll put a link in the description here below. Triskit is a very fascinating card, though. 5 cost, unique ally in Luxem, warrior angel in Luxem, and that's important for this. She has 2 power and 12 health, which is a lot. She says fire, water, and wind elements are enabled for you, which you can only play her once you're level 3. So you have to build a deck. If you want to really take advantage of that, you'd have to build a deck that like uses multiple, but then doesn't play them throughout the game. And she says on enter, you may banish your champion. If you do, Triskit becomes a unique champion with base level 3. So effectively, Triskit becomes your new champion. Your new health pool is 12 because it's Triskit's health. She has a base attack of 2, which no other champion does, and is thus able to attack inherently without using any attack cards. And your champion went from assassin in set 1 at least to now warrior. So any of your class bonus assassin cards no longer work, but if you have class bonus warrior cards, which hang on to that for a little bit because there's going to be a card where that comes up as well, then those have class bonus turned on for them. At the very least, this can be like a buffer of an additional like 11 health or more, depending on how much health you had left, because any damage you had on your assassin is gone now. Triskit comes in as a clean 12 health, no damage on her. And then you can hopefully try and finish the game using the power of unlocking all the elements and being a warrior now and having 2 base attack. So very interesting card. Again, this is where I said like this ultra rare Luxera's map might be the key to like being able to play this, because otherwise if you're trying to really take advantage of having all the elements in your deck, you need to see Triskit. Otherwise 2/3 or of your deck or whatever doesn't do anything. So I'm excited to see the builds of people trying to make Triskit work. It may be a meme level deck. She may be a meme level deck, but she could be a very fun deck to play as well. Love to see what kind of decks people come up with for her. But I think if you're playing her, you need 4 copies, period. You need to get 4 of them. Terra. We have several awesome Terra allies in Terra, as well as some other stuff. So we have Arima, Gaia's Wings, one of the super rares here. This is a unique ally, Tamer, Beast, Phoenix. 3 cost, 3 power, 3 health with Pride 5, so you can't attack, block, retaliate anything with Arima unless you have Pride 5, unless you have level 5 or more. She has, at the beginning of your recollection phase, put 3 buff counters on Arima. So every single turn that Arima sits out there, it gains 3 buff counters, which give it +1/+1. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then on death, Arima goes into your memory, which means that Arima is not going to go away very easily. You can always replay it, and then if it sits out there, if it's not answered immediately, it gets harder and harder to deal with, and it's pushing more damage on you. So I really like this card. I think it's a pretty strong one. Pride 5 is not hard for Tamer to reach at level 3, so it's going to be very easy for Arma to attack. And if you can just kind of like prolong the game a little bit, Arma will eventually give you like so much damage that your opponent will get overwhelmed. I think it's a good card, and it's very hard to, obviously very hard to deal with also. So I think this is one of Terra's better allies to play, although it doesn't end the game as quickly as maybe some other ones do. So it might depend on how the Terra build looks, how your Tamer build looks. Artificer's Opus is a very interesting one because this one is not actually an animal or a beast. It's a Tamer Construct Golem with 8 cost, but with efficiency. Which should mean that a lot of the time this is going to have 3, 2, 1 cost, depending on what kind of buffs you have out there for your level. It has 4 attack and 8 health, which is pretty huge. It enters the field rested, unfortunately, so can't do anything the turn it comes into play. But it has Cleave, and Cleave allows it to attack all units the chosen opponent controls, and its attacks can't be intercepted as well. So, This is another card that I think over time will eventually overwhelm the opponent. It prevents any go wide strategies from really getting any ground, but it's very slow to activate. But that said, it could be totally free to play depending on what level you've reached. So I think it's an interesting card. I'm not sure it's my choice right now for Tamer allies to play. But I do think it makes me interested to see if we'll get like an Artificer style Tamer in the future. That then would take a little better advantage of this. I will say that if you're playing a wind deck, this interests me a little bit more. I think this is better for a wind tamer deck where you're able to use wind's abilities to ready units in order to be able to attack with it immediately. Then I think it gets a lot stronger. The 8 health on is very important though, because if this is cleaving a bunch of allies, it can be retaliated against by any of them. So you need to be able to survive the attack as well. And your opponent can kind of play around it by just keeping some strong allies ready so that it can just retaliate into you if you attack with it. But importantly, it doesn't have pride. So that's the nice thing. If your level's going to go down, you're still going to be able to activate attacks with it. All right, and then our final super rare here is Hymn of Gaia's Grace. This is a Tamer skill melody action. It costs 3, and it is a fast action. So again, that melody harmony thing, I think this is one of the things that pushes Tamer into being the build for melodies and harmonies, but we'll see. It has Glimpse 3, which allows you to look at the top 3 cards of your deck and place them in the top or bottom of your deck in any order, in any fashion you'd like, and then draw a card. And then you may put an animal or beast ally card with reserve cost level or less from your hand onto the field. If you do, you may change the target of an attack that targets your champion to that ally. So I think this card is very, very potent. And again, like a reason to maybe have like a melody harmony deck, because then you can get a little extra synergy off of those harmonies, but it's really best played on your opponent's turn when you can drop a massive beast down. And especially if you have the pride to the ability, so you have the ability to retaliate with it if your level's high enough, if it has pride. You can put down a pretty big ally, redirect the attack, and then push the damage back on the opponent. On the attacking unit, or champion actually as well. So I think this can be a very strong surprise ability. If you can use this with Arma, especially, if you're playing the Sylvie that gives +1 health to all your allies and beasts, so it can more easily survive certain attacks, you can play it, redirect the attack, retaliate, deal the damage. Then at the start of your turn, it gets the 3 buff counters as well. And then you're swinging with the 6 power thing on your next turn. That is a very strong ability, but then there are other very strong beasts as well. We'll definitely see them when we look at rares too, that this can kind of cheat into play to redirect a lot of damage. If you don't have the pride though, you can't retaliate. That's the important thing. But even in a worst case scenario, you can put something out like Gaia's Songbird, redirect a massive attack into it, like that assassin coup de grace or something. Just redirect it into the Songbird, get the on-enter ability to dig for cards, and just let the animal die, unfortunately. But use it to chump block a little bit. It does still dig for cards. It draws you cards. This I feel like this one kind of does it all. I really like this card. I would definitely think about playing 4 of this in tamer decks that are interested in playing those stronger animal and beast cards, which I think will be a lot of them. So all right, well, that is all 35 super rares and 5 ultras. It's 40 cards. We have even more to go through in some of the other videos, so do stay tuned. Those will be coming very soon. I do want to start getting these out as soon as I can, though, so if you don't see right now, if you don't see some little video links coming up on the screen here, they will be coming soon as the other videos are published, and they'll be popped on here as soon as I get a chance to record everything and pump it out. But if you did enjoy this, if you found this helpful, I would love to hear from you guys. Go ahead and drop a comment, give it a like, and subscribe for the channel for more Grand Archive and other TCG content. That's going to be it for this video. I have more of these to record, so I got to get going. I hope you guys enjoy Grand Archive when it comes out. You have a wonderful day, and we'll catch you in the next video.